Good evening, everyone. So, articles for the day. Let's begin with this Nobel Prize. As such, I haven't prepared the background of this, so I'm just highlighting this. I will be covering the science part behind it when more further articles come up, explainers come up on this, or I will prepare it myself. I haven't prepared it yet, so I'll come up with this maybe after a couple of days. Okay. So what is this? This is the Nobel Prize for Medicine on how our body regulates the autoimmune responses. How is it related to the autoimmune therapies? How it is related to the cancers, etc. So this discovery, usually any article that is talking about Nobel prizes and the science behind it usually becomes important. So when we are discussing for prelims, the last 5 years of this topic will be important. So I'll compile them all together and then we will address it all at once. But since this appeared in the first page, I just wanted to highlight that. If you are interested, you can read it yourself. Okay. Yeah. Uh, yeah. This article, what can you do from this? You can just take this specific NGO as a value addition for your gender issues, or this entire article as an example for gender issues communication part, like how social change can be ensured through civil society organizations and through activities like filmmaking by involving women. How do you make them stakeholders of this whole um, issue? You can use that and specifically this highlight this point. Mahila Jan Adhikar Samiti. You can use that single NGO as an example. Just note it down. Okay. Now, calling out the criticism of the Indian judiciary. So this article is written by an advocate, and this is in response to the criticism against the judiciary. There is this writer called Sanjeev Sanyal, and there is an event called Nyaya Nirman Conference. Recently it happened, and in that conference, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, who happens to represent the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, commented that India's biggest problem is actually created by judiciary when it comes to development. Now, this whole article is a defense, or rather, I would say, a criticism for the comments made by Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. So, let us see, broadly speaking, what are those comments, why it is, according to this writer, unfair. Okay. So, what are the two metrics of comparison here? On one hand, you have development, and Sanjeev Sanyal is comparing it with the ideals that judiciary chases. What are the principles that judiciary is supposed to uphold? Fairness or justice. So these are abstract principles. When it comes to development, it is indicated by GDP numbers or all the macroeconomic indicators. These are quantifiable data. So, the writer defends judiciary by saying that you cannot compare apples and oranges. And by saying that judiciary is the reason for India's lack of development is far-fetched. In fact, it is just a symptom, according to this writer. But why did Sanjeev Sanyal say that India is suffering because judiciary is not responding? Let's take a step back. Yesterday we were discussing ADR. What did we discuss during that article? In that article on ADR, we saw the India Justice Report. Okay? And in that, you saw how many pending cases were there as cited by the National Judicial Data Grid. As many as 4.4 crore cases are there, pending, lying pending. We've also seen how Law Commission reports also suggest that it would take many hundreds of years to finish these cases. In this context, Sanjeev Sanyal believes that one of the major reasons why judiciary is having so many cases pending is because reasons. First reason, one of the reasons cited here is vacations. See, in Supreme Court and High Court, usually judges take vacations, like summer holidays, Dasara holidays. No, I'm not joking. They literally have summer holidays. Recently they've had a vacation for Dasara as well. So, don't laugh, I'm being serious, okay? These vacations are cited as the first reason. And actually, the writer is offended because of this. Look at this point. Another easy target is the court sittings. The visible part of the job might run only from 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And they also have vacations, is the complaint of Sanjeev Sanyal. Let's go and look at the defense. But judges may hear anywhere between 50 to 100 cases during the window. It is a difficult job to do as well. Behind those hearings lie hours of preparation, reading briefs, draft, signing orders, and considering precedents. Much of the judicial work requires cerebral thought and happens behind closed doors in the early hours of the morning or late into night, and certainly across weekends. My only question is, when you have a technology like AI, which can reduce this grunt work, what is judiciary, what is judiciary's defense not to use AI in this repetitive work? Does it make any sense? It's up to you to see. When you have to do the drafting work, you don't have to sit down and type it. I'm not asking AI to give judgments. You can reduce a lot of the so-called grunt work. See, reading briefs, drafting, signing orders, and considering precedents. All of this need not be done manually, right? Which is the case in a lot of lower level courts. See, when I am saying AI, I'm not implying that we are automating judiciary. There is always something called a human in the loop design. You need human beings to verify and ensure that these biases are absent. Doesn't mean you have to manually type down everything and prepare the case briefings, because a lot of these work are repetitive. Point number one. Anyway, vacations too are misunderstood. Let's see what he has to say. Their colonial origins make them an easy target, but courts have benches sitting through vacations too, and the holidays that other judges get is meant for a little relaxation, but for the most part to complete their reserved judgments. Why is it that corporate people don't have little relaxation? What is judicial accountability? Definition. Any definition, guys? Define judicial accountability. Okay. Point noted. Let's see some statistics here. Do they have any statistics? Yesterday we have had some. One simple status, 4.4 crore cases are pending. Now, again, can you define judicial accountability? Using this stats. Speedy justice. 39A. Okay? When you have this priority, this little relaxation sometimes is obviously targeted, right? Why is it that only judiciary has this? Why not anyone else? Does bureaucracy have? Does Prime Minister take a holiday in summer? Do they go for vacations? So, is this defense strong enough? Do we have any established procedures to dispose of these cases? Even if they are, is the judiciary being accountable? Now, can you consider this defense? Yes, there are some valid arguments within the article. For example, it will be very unrealistic for India to expect the present level of, how do I put it? Present level of judges or the existing machinery to handle and dispose of all these 4.4 cases, 4.4 crore cases. Obviously, we need more number of judges, more infrastructure, better adoption of technology, fast tracking, digitization of all this. All these points are agreed here. But the only problem they've had is targeting judiciary and saying that it is the biggest reason why. There is valid point in this article too. We cannot pinpoint only judiciary. Let's say if we see the number of cases that are existing in the courts, who is the biggest litigant? The government itself. A case to the point being the Commercial Act 2015, there is one section called Section 12A. Before these commercial courts take up these cases, there is a clause which says that there should be a mandatory pre-trial mediation. Now, who comes up with this kind of provisions? Is it the parliament or the judiciary? Now, shouldn't parliament ensure that this is enforced? Is it the job of judiciary? No. So, if pre-trial mediation is actually happening in a good way, why will they come to the courts? Is one of the good points raised in this article. India has to have an all India judicial services. This is a long-standing issue. When you have all India civil services, why not judicial services? An argument to this is that local courts, okay, laws vary according to the state and law should be interpreted through the lens of the local culture is what they say. But more or less laws are uniform for a large extent. And the rest of the delta or the gap that exists, is it so much that we can't train our people when you are conducting an all India level exam? No. If that is the case, same argument can be used even for civil services. So, judiciary is functioning under opaqueness. The accountability part is somewhat hazy. There is an allegation of nepotism. Last month, we have seen an article where Justice Nagaratna and her criticism and her dissent was not publicized officially on record. We had to hear that from the newspapers. Alleged rumors. We don't know for a fact. It did not go on record. How is that accountability? So there is definitely a need for every stakeholder to take cognizance of these facts. From the side of the parliament, you have to see that laws are legislated with thought. For example, this 12A, Section 12A of the Commercial Courts Act. When you want a pre-trial mediation, you should also ensure that mediation centers are functioning properly. If you appeal again, you are just adding unnecessarily one more layer to this litigation. These kind of steps should be taken from the government side. Judiciary is also right. They don't have enough infrastructure, enough number of judges. The lower courts judges are burdened. When you hear 50 to 100 cases in a single day, what kind of quality can you even expect? And when judgment is passed off, obviously it will go for an appeal. And therefore, the very norm of speedy justice goes for a toss, and thereby goes the maxim, justice delayed is justice denied. How do we fix this? Each of the stakeholders should take their role. And if we have to see the whole set of judicial reforms, we have to start with more recruitment. More recruitment. Second, more infrastructure. See, for example, law ministry. Law ministry is responsible for allocating the budgets for the administrative part of judiciary. Let's say constructing buildings or giving salaries. That budgets are not enough. So we have to give more budgetary allocation for the Department of Justice. That's one. Third one is digitization of records. As a court of records, we will have to ensure that AI based systems, if I'm not wrong, there is something called SUPAS or SUPAC, right? So go back and check that once. E-courts also is digitization. So right now the phase 3 part is supposed to be mainstream. So there are a lot of concerns like this, and I think if we can leverage the AI in lower courts, a lot of these headaches can be resolved. But I think that will be the last option because status quo will be maintained. However, the government is still pushing for e-courts, etc. Like the phase 3 is going on at a fast pace. Let's hope for better reforms. Israel's new doctrine of going on the attack. See, our beloved president of the world, Donald Trump, has come up with a new idea. Just like his predecessors wanted to come up with a force that can contain Taliban in Afghanistan, they wanted to create a force, international stabilization force, that will restore peace in Gaza. So, just like how Pakistan thinks Donald Trump should get Nobel Peace Prize, he's trying his best to create the same image between Israel and Palestine. So he came up with this proposal that a 20-point agenda will be created, and there are two phases for this. Phase 1 is about how they will stop the war, just like how they stopped the war between India and Pakistan. So the ceasefire part was agreed. Second part, where Donald Trump thinks he will, just like how he succeeded in the first part, because of his intervention, he also thinks that second part of the intervention will also work, which is the creation of a stabilization force, international stabilization force, and it is not under the aegis of UN. It is backed by US. So this force will try to police or train the police of Palestine against Israel. Is this funded by UNGA? No. Does it have any connection to the peacekeeping forces? No. Does it have international approval? Again, no. What role does US have in creating this? Why not have a multilateral intervention under UNSC or UNGA? These are some points which are not addressed. So, as this is going on, as much as we would like to believe that ceasefire came into existence after an entire year of war between Gaza and Israel. Now, what is the situation? According to US, there is a ceasefire, but in reality, what exactly is happening is nobody is backing down. Israel is going all in. And even though on paper there is a ceasefire, what is happening in reality is the last month itself, last week or last month, okay, for the sake of convenience, in September, there is a UN report citing that Israel is indeed carrying out a alleged genocide. How can you exactly say that you have a ceasefire and at the same time have a UN report which says that there is an alleged genocide? US have no legitimacy here. UNGA is nowhere in the picture. This stabilization force to rebuild Gaza ironically has no financial contribution from US. Secondly, much to the favor of Israel, this ISF also has Arab states who will be having a standing army there, and they will be training the Palestinian police as Israel withdraws. Very favorable conditions for Israel, right? So just the right way to create a ceasefire. So the problem is Israel is not backing. There is no guarantee that Hamas, which is the alleged organization which has been the de facto authority. They claim the de facto authority for Gaza. They have not disarmed themselves. They are not agreeing either. So this ceasefire is conditional and it is temporary. How do you institutionalize it? This is the challenge. Now, if you go by precedents, let's go back to Lebanon in 1982 itself. In 1982, when Israel attacked Lebanon, the forces that were deployed for same reason, they just vacated just like that. They did not fight back. So that was not exactly the kind of support they were hoping for. Take a look at Afghanistan. From 2001 to 21, after many generations of soldiers and their families were tormented, both the sides, both American side as well as the Afghanistan side, what was the end result? They withdrew just like that because it's just too expensive to maintain. Now, why this double standards? Why does US want to create this, or at least take credit? This is the irony. And this writer is talking about the new doctrine of going on the attack. Simply put, nothing has changed, except that there is a temporary, hopeful ceasefire. If history were any precedents, any military-driven solution is momentary. Unless we have a politically accepted solution, peace will always be elusive. That's the gist of this article. Passive euthanasia. Okay, I will take a separate class on all the issues surrounding Article 21 and euthanasia being one of them. Under that umbrella article, I'll take this article then, so you can follow me in that lecture. Okay. We need an urban climate emergency fund. Do you have any news in mind where one particular state has kind of created a plan? Kerala. What is the plan? they created a parastatal body for planning, Kerala State Development Corporation or something like that. There is an agency which started building the urban blueprint from bottom up. In that article also, in this article also, the common point that we are talking about is how the business as usual approach is just not conducive for building cities anymore. And therefore, if we have to build climate resilient cities, what is the kind of uh, I would rather say ingredients, or what are the policy metrics that you have to incorporate along with the financial aspect, climate finance. So yesterday we have seen how, when we are talking about urban resilience, we have seen the role of finance commission, we have seen the role of nature-based solutions, we have seen the role of technology in planning better. Just like in yesterday's article, even this is focusing on that one specific metric of finance. So please read that article. And here, there is this example, because you might be from this place. Hardly, this place called Batukama Kunta is hardly a few kilometers from here. It's a very old lake. And that lake was restored after 35 years by Hydra recently. So this renewed policy by Telangana to destroy all the illegal constructions on the lake beds and carrying forward the legacy of the previous government, Mission Kakatiya, which tried to rejuvenate the lakes and also restore all the water bodies, is that nature-based solution aspect is there yesterday, right? You can use this Batkoma Kunta example because it is there in your memory. It is a local example, so if you can remember, nothing like it. You can still use this local example in your UPSC papers also. But make it clear, it's not a global level example, so they might not know what this lake is about. So please clarify what happened before and after impact. You have to clearly show that. Okay. What is important for prelims? Take a look at this. You might get a question on what this urban challenge fund of 1 lakh crore is about. Okay. You might get a question like UPSC will come up with random initiatives, right? So you might get this question. So just keep a note of that. Urban challenge fund. Now, this chart, again, I'm not asking you to by heart anything. What are the observations that you are supposed to make here? When you are talking about the crimes against children, I want you to automatically tag this to UNCRC, United Nations Convention on the Rights of Child. This is one of the earliest universally ratified convention. Okay. So as per this, what are the rights of children and what are the corresponding constitutional provisions and the acts legislated by the parliament? I want you to have a ready-made framework, map the objectives of UNCRC, respective constitutional provisions and the acts therein. So there is an observation made about Assam, Rajasthan and Kerala which are not anywhere close. And yet there are some common patterns emerging. What are those common patterns? I want you to read this particular section, especially with relevance to POXO. Okay? There is one more article on that cough syrup. One second. You might get some prelims questions from that. One second, let me see. Yeah, this one. See, recently there was a cough syrup which was contaminated, and here you have to know about the good manufacturing practices as per the Drugs and Cosmetic Act. So this is one thing. I don't know if it is here or some other news, but I just want to highlight this point. What happened recently? Not just recently, even previously, like 2 or 3 years ago also, in Gambia, our generic medicines were exported, and those samples were found to have diethylene glycol, which is a contaminant in the cough syrup, which has led to unfortunate events here as well as in Gambia. Children suffered because of this. And this takes a dent on the credibility of India as a generic drug market or the hub. Why? Because even though generic medicines are cheap, they are expected to maintain the quality standards. And to ensure those quality standards and the fact that they meet this global parameters, the Drugs and Cosmetics Act has something called the Good Manufacturing Practices Manual. And recently, in 2024, this GMP manual has been updated, which mandates the digitization of the quality check process, where every time if there is some discrepancy, it should be flagged immediately. In the absence of this digitization on a centralized portal itself, this kind of quality problems arise and they go without any QC. To avoid that, the recent GMP practices were updated, and despite that, these issues occurred. So there is something wrong with the compliance part, and that's where the states, because drugs and cosmetics is more of a state enforcement, state-led. Health is a state subject, right? So states have a bigger role in enforcement of this. Therefore, you should probably know. Now, apart from this, one more prelims question that you can expect is to know the organizations in drugs control or anything that has got to do with medicines. You have pharmacovigilance. And there was one more body. I forgot. I'll update. So just go back and check these organizations and their respective role. For example, okay, one national surveillance tool. I don't remember the exact name. The funda here is, there is a tool which highlights at a national level any drug malfunctioning or any specific grave impact like the present cough syrup case will be taken care by the pharmacovigilance part. Central Drug Standards and Regulatory Authority is supposed to ensure the standards. Okay. So I forgot the names of the organization, but I'll come back and update it tomorrow, or you can go back and check this. Yeah. Okay. So take a look at the governance architecture when it comes to drug control and ensuring the quality of drugs. This can be one prelims question as well. That's it for the day. Thank you.